Today.
There have been further calls for the Chief Executive of the National Health Service in England to stand down because of his role at the time of the Stafford Hospital scandal. Sir David Nicholson was in charge of the Strategic Health Authority which supervised Mid-Staffordshire during part of the time when hundreds of patients were dying needlessly.
The demands came during a Commons debate watched by our political editor Patrick Burns. What have MPs been saying, Patrick?
Joanne, they were all demanding greater accountability and transparency in the NHS. A week, of course, after Sir David Nicholson appeared in front of the Commons Health Select Committee to defy demands for his resignation, including one backed up by a House of Commons motion. But one after another, our local MPs lined up to say that sooner or later Sir David Nicholson should go.
We need to turn a new page. I'm not saying that I believe that Sir David should receive a P45 now. What I'm saying is that sooner rather than later, it is essential that he departs his post.
Accountability does involve responsibility, and far too few people have taken sufficient responsibility in this case. We must reflect, and they must reflect, what message that sends.
Everybody knows that huge pressure was put on David Nicholson by his political masters to have a foundation trust in the West Midlands, and poor little Mid-Staffordshire was the one that got forced through. So in the interest of accountability and transparency that this motion calls for, I want to see an apology for forcing through foundation trust status at a time when people were dying from appalling care and the trust was going bankrupt.
Three local MPs there, but all Conservative. What have Labour had to say? They've been on the defensive because Stafford happened when they were in government.
Well, I think you've gathered that it did become increasingly partisan, this debate, as it wore on. And former Labour Health Secretaries Andy Burnham and Alan Johnson were in the chamber, and the Conservative backbenchers were sort of piling on the pressure on them over Labour's repeated refusal while in office to order the sort of full public inquiry that came into effect only once the coalition came into office. But one of our local Labour MPs, herself a member of the Health Select Committee, said that it was now time for a fundamental change of culture within the health service.
We must get away from the system where whistleblowers, Mr Deputy Speaker, are driven out of their jobs on spurious disciplinary issues. At Mid-Staffordshire, the doctors and nurses are under disciplinary reviews, but as yet I've not heard anything about whether managers are also going to be held to account.
And now, Joanne, we are hearing that the government is going to ban the sort of gagging clauses that have been notorious in these cases. So in future, any kind of deal in which there is a severance involving people who are leaving the health service under these terms will become a matter of public record.
Patrick, thank you very much indeed.